So we are continuing with part 2. And again, Genesis 6:1-8, it says basically that the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were beautiful. They came upon them basically and took them as wives. You can look up the whole chapter because it even says that they got pregnant, right? And they had giants and all that. So obviously, who are the sons of gods, right? And I want you to think about it now. I know what it is, but I don't want to scare you yet, so I'll wait till later on. So let's just continue. Okay? So here we are, Genesis 22:1-14, and it said, "Take thy son, thy only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get him into the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering upon of the mountains." Well, this is about a story, and I want you to read it. It has to do with Abraham, where if you know, basically God made a promise that he was going to have his first son, he was going to have a child. Sarah apparently couldn't have kids all the way into her old age, but she would have kids, and eventually Sarah asked Abraham, "Okay, Abraham, go basically be with the slave, and have your son." And he did, and obviously he gave Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, right? And then eventually Sarah did become pregnant and gave birth to Isaac, which has a long story, and that's how everything starts. But the point of the matter is, what I'm trying to refer to here is God knows the future, right? If we want to go deeper, why did he even mix in? And people say no, because he gave him free will and all that. Like he didn't know the future. So I just want to get you to think creatively here, because some things doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. I know what it is, but I want you to understand it, because I know it's hard, because a lot of you have faith and you don't want to accept it. But we're going to continue. It's going to get a lot worse than this. Okay? So now Genesis chapter 27 verse 41, it says this is Esau hated Jacob. Why he hated Jacob? This has to do with the story where Jacob, after he was old, got the father of Jacob, after he got old, Isaac, he was going to give a gift to one of his kids, and eventually Esau, the brother, hated Jacob because Jacob got the blessing when it was meant to him. He was blind, so the father gave the blessing, gave wives and all that to his son, gave him all his inheritance, but technically it was supposed to be for Esau. So he hated Jacob. So that's the story about that. Read that, because that's very interesting, and it adds up to more. Now, another one I want to tell you, and this is this one, Genesis chapter 32, verse 22-28, and I'm going to read it. This is why I even text it here. And it says, Jacob wrestled with God. Now, I want you to think about that, okay? Because what God are we talking about? Now, we could assume now that it's an angel, but you see, then it goes that you mean angels are God? Because think about it, because how could a mere man wrestle with God? And here we're going to go. This is why I say you cannot take the Bible literally, because there's meanings to that, because how could a man wrestle with God? And it said, and he rose up at night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servant and his 11th son at the time, and passed over and to the ford Jacob, and he took them and sent them over to the brook, and sent over that he had. Now, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with high until the breaking of the day. Now, keep in mind, guys, this here was changed in the New in the King James Version, because I remember reading this hundreds of times when I was younger, and it was changed. But nevertheless, this is where it says, and when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint. So he dislocated his joint, because he was wrestling allegedly with God. Now, watch this. He said, let him go. Right? Or let me go, I'm sorry, says God. Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go. Right? I won't let you go, except thou blessest me. See, Jacob wanted a blessing. And it said, then God changed Jacob's name to Israel. So I want you to get into detail, because there's stuff missing here. But the whole point is that you could see that this was actually, according to the Genesis, he was wrestling with God. Now, you and I know, I doubt it very much that you as a person, as a human being, going to be wrestling with God as God is a man. And right? And he dislocated his hip. So let's go forward. This is where it gets interesting. Now, remember we spoke about the attributes of God? That's what this is very important, because look at it right here. It says, you shall not bow down to them. This is when Moses, right, and gave him the 10 Commandments and all that before that. So you should not bow down to them and serve, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers on the children, to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me. Now I want you to read this in English translation because basically it's talking about like he will punish not just you, but he will punish third and fourth generation. It's like a curse that follows. All right? But it says jealous God. Now we all know, I believe, that my God is a loving God. Right? So how could an almighty, omnipresent, right, have jealousy? How could he be jealous? See that word there, jealous. It doesn't make sense because you got to remember, how could a God is not jealous of no one. And if he is jealous because he's not a God, because that means he's jealous of someone else that may be better. Because why would you be jealous? Okay? Now, this part is the most important part, and there's many others, and I want you to think about this. Go to Exodus 21 from 2 to 6, and it says, if you buy a Hebrew slave, he may serve for no more than 6 years. Set him free in the 7th year, and he will owe you nothing for his freedom. If he was single when he became your slave, he shall leave single. But if he was married before he became a slave, then his wife must be freed with him. If his master gave him a wife, like a cattle, gave him a wife while he was a slave, and they had sons or daughters, then only the man will be free in the 7th year, but his wife and children will still belong to his master. So even though he's free after the 7 years completed, his wife and his kids will belong to his master. But the slave may declare, I love my master. Oh, woohoo! I love my master, right? My wife and my children, I don't want to go free. And if he does this, his master must present him before God. Then his master must take him to the door or doorpost and publicly pierce his ear with an awl, right? After that, the slave will serve the master for what? For life. So if you fell in love with somebody and got her pregnant, God forbid, now you're stuck, buddy. Now you're a slave forever because of love, right? You're stuck because now he won't let your wife and your son or your kids go. So you might as well be a slave forever. Look at that. Now, does that sound something, and watch, I'm going to continue. Sex slaves. Oh yeah, there were sex slaves as well. When a man sell his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please the master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. And if he does not do this, 3 things for her, she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. So then you can set her free. Think about that. That's a sex slave. Okay? Now, Judges chapter 5:30. Rape and soil of war. Have they not found and divided the spoil? A womb or two for every man. That means a woman, guys. A woman for every man. You can look at the new version and you will see. A woman for every man or two. Spoil or dye material for siesta. Spoil or dye material embroidered. 2 pieces of dye work and embroidered for the neck as spoil. I want you to see that we're going to get a lot worse. So we're going to go over because this is what I want you to understand. And before I continue, I want to say, because I want you to understand this book that you saw here was written by Israel, right? By Jews. Now, obviously, I don't want to sound anti-Semitic because not all Jews are the same. Obviously, we've seen that. We see people, Jewish people trying to come for the aid of Palestine. But it gives you an idea because this book was written by them. So it gives you an idea of how they believe, right? And how they actions to this day. And we're going to see that through other videos. So before we continue, I want to go to one more, and I want to show you a real life story as of right now. So let's go next. Here, kill the entire town if you find one person that worships another god. You can read it yourself. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 13 through 19. How it talks about that if you find somebody who's worshiping another god, you have a right to burn down the whole city. All right, you can see it here. Completely burn, fire, city, and plunder for the Lord. Now, remember that at this point, they have a right to not only burn down the city, but they have a right to steal from them and all that. And I want you to see that because it says God has commanded with I come. If God commanded you to do that, that's the God you believe, I think you should be questioning that because that's very